She turned in the high pew until her sight swept the west gallery and caught its row of music men with viol, book and bow against the sinking sad tower window light. She turned again, and in her pride's despite, one strenuous viol's inspirer seemed to throw a message from his string to her below, which said, "I claim thee as my own forthright." Thus their heart's bond began, in due time signed, and long years thence, when age had scared romance, at some old attitude of his or glance, that gallery scene would break upon her mind, with him as minstrel, ardent, young and trim, bowing New Sabbath or Mount Ephraim.
Well, this wonderful poem, little romantic poem, it's a love story about two people falling in love. A woman sees the man up on the gallery playing his viol. But Owen, who is the man? Is it Thomas Hardy?
Kind of. It's not the Thomas Hardy we're talking about today. It's Thomas Hardy's father, who is also Thomas Hardy.
So the names went down the generations.
They did, for a few generations.
Yes, yes. But now, why, given that poem, why are we standing here in front of this lovely cottage here?
Well, this is River Cottage at Applehampton, and this is where another Thomas Hardy was born, and this is Thomas Hardy's grandfather.
So, and going right down through the generations, yes.
Absolutely.
And did they stay on here after he was born?
No, they didn't, not for long. They soon moved between Bockhampton and Stinsford to little villages just a few miles away.
Okay, yes, and that was where the church was, where...
Absolutely.
And that was where Jemima saw the Thomas Hardy, the father, up on the gallery and fell in love with him.
Playing at Stinsford Church.
Yes. Now, what I'd like to explore now is, why did Thomas Hardy, the poet, the novelist, use a sonnet form in this poem? Well, I'm here with Rebecca Shipp, who is editor of the Hardy Journal for the Hardy Society and who's doing a PhD at the University of Lincoln. May I call you Becky? Is that okay?
Yes, of course, yeah.
And Becky, just very briefly, let's begin, shall we, with a church romance that which I think is perhaps one of your favourite Hardy poems.
It is, yeah. Out of all of his poetry, I think a church romance is really up there with one of my favourites.
And tell us something about what you really love about this.
My favourite thing about it is this kind of idea of Jemima as a young girl, and I think it's such a different representation of what we kind of perceive her to be like. I think she's perhaps portrayed as a bit of a dragon, as quite ambitious for Hardy and quite a strong, well, it's obviously quite a strong influence in his life. But this poem really kind of gives her a different, it sees her in her youth and sees her as a young girl and sees her as quite flirtatious.
You read this and you just feel, as you say, she's a young woman falling in love, isn't she?
Yeah, and I think that's a feeling we can all kind of relate to, and I think Hardy does it so well in this one, that kind of capturing of that initial stages of romance and that kind of feeling of excitement and youthfulness and kind of seeing the man you like across the crowded room and kind of feeling that connection. And yeah, it says in it that he I claim thee as my own forthright, and it feels like they're the only two people in the church, and it's obviously a crowded congregation.
She is a proud person as well.
Yeah, massively, and we can see that in the line, she turned again and in her pride's despite, and I think we can see the echoes of the older Jemima in the younger woman. It's not like she's changed completely with age. She is still her own person, and we have that in her youth. I think it's lovely that Hardy was writing about his parents' relationship at this point. Jemima had died 2 years just previous to the publication of this poem, and I think it's a really lovely tribute to his parents' love.
Well, we're here in the library at Applehampton House, and I'm with Mark Chutter, who is the chair and academic director of the Hardy Society. So Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Giles. It's a real pleasure to be here today to talk about Hardy.
Well, Mark, the structure of this poem is a sonnet, which is really a classic love poem, isn't it?
Yes, so it's 14 lines, a sonnet, and of course we mainly get sonnets from Shakespeare. But in this poem, I think we've very much got a landscape about the church. Of course, Hardy was an architect, and he mentions such places within the church, such as the high pew, the west gallery, the sinking, sad tower window light. It's all language with a semantic field, really, about a church, isn't it?
It's lovely, and it really brings together his vocation as an architect with his new vocation as poet and novelist. It's fantastic. But tell me about the tension in this, because normally the tension in a sonnet is perhaps between two people, but here it's between two parts of one person's personality.
Yes, I think really that obviously this is written, about Jemima, about his mother, and I think that actually what's happening here is the idea about marriage, but also pride, I think, as well, but also the sort of morality perhaps of the time.
So it's really, it's about music, but I think it's also the flow of it is a very musical feel to it.
The lyrics have a musicality to them that actually, is poetry just meant to be read on the page, or is there a performativity to it? And I think in this poem, he positions his mother and father in different places, I think, within the church.
Yeah, and of course she had that tension between her own pride and marriage, and she kind of projected that on her kids because she didn't really want them to marry either.
No, she didn't want her children to get married at all. She really wanted them to fulfill their potential. And I think that's absolutely, key, because obviously Hardy became an architect first, training with John Hicks, Crick May, etc. And then, of course, the way I see it is he became an architect of words.
Well, of course, this is a love poem, but it's not a love poem about Thomas Hardy himself. It's about the love between his mum and his dad. And all the other poems we'll be talking about in later videos will be about Thomas Hardy's own loves. But before we come to those, let's hear this wonderful poem once again.
She turned in the high pew until her sight swept the west gallery and caught its row of music men with viol, book and bow against the sinking sad tower window light. She turned again, and in her pride's despite one strenuous viol's inspirer seemed to throw a message from his string to her below, which said, I claim thee as my own forthright. Thus their heart's bond began, in due time signed, and long years thence, when age had scared romance, at some old attitude of his or glance, that gallery scene would break upon her mind, with him as minstrel, ardent, young and trim, bowing New Sabbath or Mount Ephraim.